Hello and welcome to the special live stream of Demystifying Virtual Events. I'm your host, Sal Camardo with Meetup Event. And for the next 30 minutes, we'll be answering all your questions about how to create your live virtual events and how to create that same amazing experience for your audience. We'll also be giving you a behind the scenes look at a live streaming production. Joining me today is our rock star panel, Mr. Todd Cassidy, CEO at Mainline AV International. Todd has 20 years of experience in the live meeting industry space, specializing in AV production, simultaneous interpretation services, set design, and video streaming solutions. He also makes a mean blueberry muffin, although I must say the whiskey-soaked berries were a bit much. Brandon Yenser, executive producer at Sky9 LLC. When he's not wrestling grizzly bears with his bare hands in the wild, Brandon has 15 years of experience in system design and integration, directing and producing creative content, as well as live broadcasting. And last but not least, that handsome gentleman at the end, Mr. Eric Miller, project manager at Mainline AV International. Eric has 10 years of experience in live events and 8 years of experience in video post-production services. He also has 5 years as a professional disposable mask model. So he's been really busy lately. Thanks for joining us today. Let's start off. Let's jump into the first question. Our first question, and this is actually a pretty common question that I get here, but I wanted your input on this as well. Essentially, how do you start with the planning process of a virtual event? I get a lot of people that right away they want to talk about software, they want to talk about technology, but I usually tell them that that's usually something that follows, that there's other ways there's other important parts to factor for. Eric, let's start off with you. What do you usually recommend to your customers or to non-customers as well on how to really start kind of kicking off their plans for a virtual event?
Well, the first thing we always say is, if you are switching to a virtual event from a live event, take a look at your agenda. And from there, figure out what you can map over into virtual, because some things won't transfer. But really start at your agenda. Technology will come second, and you figure that out later. But if you have a good basis and an overview of what you want to accomplish and the time blocks, that's huge.
Yeah, I guess if I would, so they could sort of help direct you and figure out the tech behind it. I don't think anyone's expecting meeting planners to figure out the tech as much as they are, hey, this is what I want to do. Can you make this happen? How do I make that happen? So reaching out to people early on can fix some of those things up front.
Excellent. Now, just to clarify, when you say tech provider, because there's kind of this really blurred line, for lack of better terms. Can we just clarify real quickly what you mean by technology provider?
Technology provider, mostly with dealing with the streaming portion of that. They're going to have to work with other people and resources as far as things like integrations of meeting apps and other things like that. So when I'm talking like AV or visual provider, we're talking about the streaming function of the video product, but you're still going to need to sort of work with a team to produce bigger things, if that sort of makes sense.
Excellent. Yeah, it's something that I know I've been mentioning, and I know for some of you that have joined our, what's the reason why you're creating this? And just, to Eric's point, being able to kind of map that experience out, based on that goal and purpose. So how are you taking those individual parts of your live meeting or of your live in-person meeting, and then basically moving that into the virtual space? All right, we're going to move on to the next question. But before we do that, a couple of reminders. All the questions that you're hearing right now are questions that we've collected just in the last few weeks here at Meetup at Mainline AV. It's up by Meetup app in either the iOS App Store or in the Google Play Store. And join the event. All you have to do is download it. And then once you see that select event screen, click on the Demystifying Virtual Events and join the event. You'll be able to go to the dialogue section and submit your questions there. We'll get those live questions immediately, and then we'll start answering questions as soon as we get them. Now, this next question, I'm going to actually pass this question off to Todd. How much control and engagement do you want the attendees to have, and how do you direct the focus of the attendees?
That's a great question. I think now more than ever, we're in a position where attendee engagement is paramount. We've said it, and everyone's seeing it. The distractions right now at home are impossible, and I think we're all kind of missing that. Our four-walled, windowless meeting room spaces. It was an easy environment to control with too much information, but you do want to engage them in a meaningful way that'll keep them focused. Through polling, gamification, all these things that the app is offering us, it's a great way to garner their attention. And remember why you're using that. It's not only keeping them focused, but it's also a valuable tool for the planners and the clients to use to gain information. We've talked about it a bunch too, and I think we've all seen, kind of the talking head with the slide look. And
to everyone on the panel, because it is a really good question. I've been getting this a lot, and I feel like everyone on the panel can kind of give their 2 cents in. Question is, I'm in charge of all of our sponsors and exhibitors. How do you recommend we keep them happy? We need them to stay with us. We run multiple live conferences per year. Now, typically when I have this conversation with people thinking about sponsorship, I usually ask them a few questions to kind of figure out, is it just sponsors? Is it sponsors and exhibitors? Is it only more like a platinum or like a platinum sponsor or platinum exhibitor versus somebody who's spending less? And you really want to think about this in 2 paths. Your first path is the live stream. So things that you're injecting in the stream. The second path is going to be an app. So everything that you're delivering through the app. There's a ton of things from the app perspective, things from in-app banner placement, sponsored sections, sponsored push notifications, virtual exhibit halls. You could do things like, gamify the experience where they can go around from vendor to vendor and answer a question, but each question is password protected so that you have to actually have some sort of interaction, or your exhibitors. I have a client that recently set it up where every exhibitor had a Calendly link to their calendar. So what they could do is they could go in and pre-create all of the forms to pre-qualify depending on the individual exhibitor. So the exhibitor handles setting up their own questions to pre-qualify people that they want to meet with. Somebody goes into the exhibit hall inside of their app. They click on the exhibitor, they click on their calendar, and now they see everything that's available to them for the next few days, and they can book time with them directly. There's a lot, do you think, as far as what you can do from a in-stream perspective?
I guess first of all, it would be graphics. When we produce broadcasts, we like to assemble things called broadcast packages, and that gives you branded graphic elements to include in your stream that match the brands of the company, such as backgrounds, lower thirds, transition slides. Could be for a different vendor of each session, could be a sponsor, and then everything's produced kind of with their branding, and that would be an opportunity to make them happy.
Yeah, and I think we've been getting a lot of interest in going with the virtual exhibit halls. It's great to be able to schedule time with a vendor or a sponsor, go in, be able to chat with them, post your questions. That's been really kind of powerful so far. And even kind of that's on a more elaborate side, but even down to just on more simple broadcasts, breaks and things like that, we're just scrolling sponsor groups. And that's still getting the message in front of people, and I think going a long way with the sponsors.
And I think, I know one other thing that we've done is, and it depends on your industry that you have out there, but during the registration portion, the meeting planners have put like a little opt-in to share your contact information with vendors or exhibitors, and then the attendee gets to choose.
Excellent. Let's move on to the next question. And this one I'm actually going to post to Brandon. When should I consider using a collaborative platform such as Zoom versus streaming platforms like YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, you have to answer the question of, do I need two-way communication between participants or a one-way broadcast? Um, in our case, we're using a two-way communication between us as panelists to discuss, but we're streaming, aka broadcasting it to panelists and forcing them to submit questions through a Meet app so we can moderate it and have a very professional and constructive stream.
Great. Next question. Do we need to have speaker rehearsals, and do you have any recommendations on doing rehearsals?
I'll take that one. Yes, you should definitely have speaker rehearsals. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but one of the things we do is a day out from the broadcast, from the stream, we like to get about 30 minutes blocked on the speaker's calendar just to go over basic things like what it looks like in their room, what their internet speed is like, can we hear them okay? Do they look good? Lighting and all that, those sorts of things that you want in a nice production. And so rather than us have to FedEx something overnight, if we have that buffer time, we can put together packages of, like lighting and a camera and get it out to them. So that way it makes your stream look nicer and we can work with them.
Now, would you say that's a very common occurrence? I mean, where you would have to bundle packages to send out?
No. I mean, we don't have to. It's definitely something we offer. Just if you want to, elevate your production value a little bit. For instance, like in this call now, Todd is on a webcam on his actual phone. You're on a webcam. Brandon, later on, we can offer, and what we do offer mostly is, we go out, we get everyone together and do studio shoots like this. So that way your broadcast looks as professional as possible, just like a TV shoot.
And I know this is kind of the geek in me, but what kind of camera are you using?
It's nothing fancy because ultimately it all gets dumbed down to about 1080. But so this is just a 1080p camera, Canon XF200. Brandon, I'm not sure what you're using up in your studio.
I have a Panasonic DVX200. It's a 4K camera.
Yeah, its image looks a little crisper. So that way, when you do go out on these streams, you're presenting your best foot forward, But of course, that's, who knows when we'll be able to get together, but that'll be, I think, coming down the line. I hope coming down the line soon.
Great. Let's take the next question. And this one I'm actually going to post to Todd. I think you'd be probably the best person to answer this. But what are the advantages of pre-recording meeting content versus everything live?
Right. So I think there's a lot of advantage to doing pre-recording. It gets back to those distractions again, too. With the pre-recording, we can get rid of the bar. It can be difficult and poses its challenges. But, it's pretty easy for us to go in. We can pre-record all your presenters, go in and edit it back together and give you a nice final product. And then the nice thing is you can still go live back to a Q&A panel, and really no one's kind of the wiser about it. So there's a good way to integrate the two together to come up with a great way to get your message out there.
Excellent. Yeah, and something that I know I've been talking to a lot of customers about this. I actually have a client the other day that had a rather large event. What they decided to do was split, so their general session or their plenary sessions was all live stream. And then when they did their breakouts, it would flip to that you would basically be pre-recorded breakouts. So in those but essentially what they were doing is basically, live stream for general session and then pre-recorded content for the breakouts. Now they're able to save that content for later, essentially build a content library. And really it's on demand. At any time, anybody can go into the app and access any one of that content so that it's available. So I think now is a really good stopping point before we continue on with more questions to actually take a behind the scenes, kind of explain the behind the scenes a little bit. Eric? Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting what we've done, and we've kind of pieced a bunch of tools together. So all, as you know, we're all dialed into a video conferencing platform. Todd's in Florida, Sal, you're in Chicago. Brandon and I are in 2 different parts of Pennsylvania. And then from there, we take that video conferencing, we bring it into some editing software where we can overlay graphics, we can do transitions, layering, mix all the audio together, add presentation and other graphics. And then from there, we send it out into the stream, which can get embedded into the app. And that's how people are interacting from that way. And then the remote speakers like yourself, Sal, you can explain kind of what your setup is.
Yeah. So I am actually right now on my laptop. I've got a little bit nicer of a webcam setup, but it is a webcam. So it's not like any special like high quality camera by any means, not like Eric or Brandon, but I do have this nice little Yeti microphone that I got to say is fantastic. The sound quality on it is, I think, really, really great. This particular line here, the blue line, is really popular with podcasters. And I have a simple 3-point lighting setup as a fill light. And then I have a backlight set up to kind of separate me from the background. There are no other lights on in the room. It's literally just these 3 lights. And that's kind of a standard setup. Now, obviously, you're not going to, not everyone's going to have access to lights, but, Eric, you could probably talk about this a little bit more. I mean, I know you guys send out, rigs, sometimes lighting rigs to speakers. So that might be an option for some people. But, in a lot of cases, if you have a lot of natural light, unfortunately, I don't. But if you do have if you're in an area with a lot of natural light, a lot of that's going to translate well through the camera.
So we wanted to kind of show the difference of something you could use that you obviously already have. So I just have a small tripod with my I've got a Samsung Galaxy Note 10. So you can see the image quality from it's a little bit better. I think the resolution is better than the built-in webcam on my computer. And then from there, I'm also just using kind of a small USB microphone, which I think cuts out a lot of the ambient noise in the room. But I happen to be fortunate because I'm in Florida and I have lots of sunlight. So it's pretty bright in here and not heavy issues on that side.
Yeah, I'm in Chicago, so I don't get those pleasures. So maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 speakers, whatever the case is. And all this video footage is coming right back into essentially where you're at, which is, the AV hub, for lack of better terms. You're streaming home. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So a little bit behind the scenes, I can actually pull up a shot for everyone here of everything kind of being produced live and remote. So we are all away from each other, and basically I'm using the conferencing platform to bring in each person on individual channel screen, or by using multi-viewers to put up these sort of the fantastic split screen that we use quite often here. So when you do something like this, you can scale things from any number of participants and actually produce the stream as if it were sort of like a broadcast or a TV show. There's no reason that you could not use professional broadcasting principles when everyone is remote like we are now, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And actually, if you mind holding on this particular frame, I just want to kind of explore this a little bit more, because I know I have a lot of conversations with customers and non-customers alike, just about, what's going on at the same time. You kind of end up with screen fatigue at that point, or we like to call it. But there's a lot of opportunities on this page to be able to, promote sponsors, or be able to, insert additional information, kind of like, Nightline, where somebody's sitting there and you have the graphic popping up next to them. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Or the agenda coming up next things,
Absolutely.
Bringing that to them while they're watching the screen gets their eyes moving a little bit, and it certainly helps out tremendously.
Yeah. Or even a 15-second ad, like almost like a commercial during a TV program, like a 15-second clip in between speakers that shows off, you're leading up maybe into, it's kind of like, think of it like the Super Bowl. Obviously an ad during the Super Bowl is the most expensive because the most amount of people are watching it. Well, you almost want to think of it that way. When are you inserting that ad leading up into or leading out from the keynote speaker? So, because that's going to be probably the most watched thing out of your event. So little things like that are kind of interesting to me, because you really are now almost like becoming like a TV or a movie producer. This is something that I've been telling, again, customers and non-customers alike, is that with virtual events, you're doing away with all of the comment.
Yeah, exactly. And, one of the things is this is all ready to go now. If there's events in the next week, next 2 weeks, next 3 months, this is ready to go. So yeah, we just need people to sort of understand what they can do and how to implement it into their unique situations.
Great. So this next question, I'm actually going to toss this one over to Eric. Do streams ever fail, and what sort of contingencies can we consider to adapt if they do?
We like to keep people close by is we make sure that they have a phone with them and that we have an audio bridge to get them back in. So worst case scenario, we can at least hear their audio for their presentation.
Great. Next question. We're going to kind of lightning around this because we got a bunch of questions coming through. And this one's actually from our friend Abby. So what is the difference between using the app to gather Q&A versus an online meeting platform? Does the extra step of using the app deter usage? No, it doesn't. And as a matter of fact, you kind of want to think of it as you're now giving them the ability to get more content than just being able to submit a question during a live stream. Because remember, the app is going to, it's not like right on the monitor for you, but it also does kind of separate it out to make it feel more like a live event where you're watching the stage, which is on your screen, and you're responding via your app, but you're still able to consume all of the content in real time as needed. All right, next question. And actually, I will open this one up. So Todd or Eric or Brandon, whichever one of you guys want to jump in on this. Do you have a range of what the costs involved with doing a virtual event?
You want to go to the sky's the limit. It's really what you and your client are looking for in the end product. But, I would say for a virtual, very easy stream, you could be looking as low as, the cost of a technician for the day and some minimal equipment. So, $1,000 to a couple $1,000. And then, you want to get into a real nice broadcast, pre-recording, multi-shoot thing. I mean, we can go as high as you'd like. So it really covers the gamut, but there's definitely,
a range, so to speak. But, each event's going to be different, even the most simple to the most complex. We like to approach each one as an individual and do justice.
Yeah, and I typically tell people, I'm like, are you producing something like this, or are you producing something like The Tonight Show? The range could be pretty dramatic depending on what kind of experience you're trying to deliver to your audience. All right, let's take another question here. When looking at engagement across a virtual event, how does that differ between a live event? Can we expect a drop in engagement? Yeah. Eric?
Yeah, sure. I find, especially your content, like I said before, and whittling it down to really key things to keep everyone thinking and engaged. So it's maybe taking your meeting that was 8 hours and taking it down to 4, and maybe taking that 4 2 times, like a biweekly seminar or something along those lines. And that way your attendees can digest it a little bit better, and you can stay in front of them more often too. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. You can win both ways.
Excellent. Yeah, chunk of the virtual event to the other, and the app kind of helps kind of mesh everything together, as well as a good host. If you have a good host during any type of live streaming event, obviously it's going to create more of a consistent flow throughout the whole thing. Let's see here. We've got time for one more question, and I know we got a bunch of questions here, but our space is going to be transformed in the next coming month, 2 months, 6 months, year.
Right. So, sorry, Eric.
No, go ahead. You go.
Yeah, I think we're all going to come to for the time being. We need to be ready to have kind of a hybrid between these two worlds. Companies are still going to have travel restrictions. People are going to be afraid to get on airplanes. So, I think we're still going to see remote presenters, remote attendees, even when we can meet again. So I think a good way to think about it is even when we can start going live again, we get people together in locations. Obviously, we can make a nicer broadcast that way to send out. But again, we want to keep the creativity. We want to keep it fresh. We want to give attendees that are watching remotely, something to keep them engaged. So, but, I think for perhaps a foreseeable future, we're looking at a good mix of how we're going to do, the meetings on site as well as virtually.
Yeah,
I'd agree.
Yeah, and I sometimes wonder how long will this last, and are people going to get used to the virtual environment so much that when you do get to 100% normal, are people going to expect this kind of broadcast production even if they weren't previously using it? Because people,
we've been talking to a lot of customers and non-customers alike regarding this, and this is something that we feel, while right now everyone is jumping into virtual events and some people are just, punting their events for later on in the year or possibly next year, there is the reality that, come 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, however long it's going to take to get out of this, there are still going to be a lot of people that are going to be a little gun shy about getting on a plane or being in a room full of a bunch of people. So will there be a value to at least understanding this space, the virtual event environment, and being able to deliver that concurrently with the live event? You're going to start seeing a lot more hybrid events coming up. And then maybe at some point, some companies will go right back to just doing live events. There is also the reach factor. When you're simulcasting this as a hybrid event, you can reach a lot more people. So there is going to be that factor to consider. Excellent. Well, listen, guys, I want to take a quick moment because we are past time, but I want to thank this issue, but we will be recording this, or we've been recording this, I should say. So we will send you a copy of the recording after. If you do have any additional questions, feel free to keep submitting your questions through the Q&A. We will be collecting the questions, answering them all, and then sending it. All of the questions that came through, we'll be sending out to you. That said, I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to special thanks to our panelists, Eric, Todd, Brandon. You guys were great today. And hey, guys, let's just keep learning. This is a great opportunity to learn new things, experiment, push the limits, and see what we can do with this. So, from everyone here at Meetup,
thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.